Welcome to Packets and Bolts, podcast about technology, life, philosophy, and everything in between. It is Sunday, December 17th, 2023. This is your host, Muskrat, along with my co-host, Mongoose.
Hello.
Today, we sit down with audio recording and mixing expert Myron Fett, better known as Midnight Swami, to discuss his time with Sweetwater, along with his new company, Songwriter Support, details of which can be found at his website, swamisden.com. swamisden.com. That is SWAMISDEN.com. Visit the services section for details. Email the show, packetsandbolts@gmail.com, packetsandbolts@gmail.com. Join us on Discord. Follow us on Mastodon. All right, the VPN. Oh, the VPN. It's been growing, but you have to know where to find the special hidden link to get the Packets and Bolts VPN. If you find yourself in an authoritarian regime, look for Packets and Bolts VPN. It'll get you out of there.
Like, I promise you it doesn't suck as much as Cisco AnyConnect.
It uses ephemeral connections. You never know where you are. You never know where you went. Packets and Bolts VPN. Oh, yeah. All right. Well, it's almost the end of the year. Normally we do a year in review, but not today. We're doing an interview.
Maybe we do the year in review next month.
Yeah, we might.
Coming up on the new year here.
We might. We'll find out. All right. What's been going on otherwise?
And upcoming, at some point, there's going to be a best of Packets and Bolts for the what? We've been doing this for like 4 years now.
Yeah, something like that. 5 years? I don't remember. It started with
could be a lot of editing, a lot of long hours in the editing room.
It all started with a microphone and a dream. This mic, this USB condenser mic that's sitting on the table right now is what spurred this whole thing when I was doing consulting, and I decided to buy this thing, and I had better sound than anyone on any conference call because everyone was using their like laptop mics.
Hello, who joined?
Yeah.
Sorry, I was double muted.
Yeah, I know.
God, I hate that, man. Drink every time you hear somebody on a Teams meeting say, sorry, I was double muted.
Yeah, triple when you got a dedicated mic that you can push a button on. All right. Well, before we get to the interview, which will be coming up, Fort Worth. I don't know if I pronounced that right.
Pronounce what?
Fort Worth.
Forthcoming?
Well, there's a, Fort Worth.
Forthwith?
Yeah, is there two TH sounds?
I think so.
Before that, we got a few headlines.
We need to interview a English professor one of these days.
I know.
Yeah.
We tried.
Did we try?
We tried emailing an English professor about contractions, but the response was very elementary, and
was grammatically incorrect.
I think she thought we were asking what a contraction was when we were actually trying to get in more details about what a contraction, how you make it. But she did listen to some episodes. She said it was. We sounded quite reasonable was her response. Whatever the topic. I can't remember what episodes she listened to, but
I'll take it.
Yes, that's a high praise coming from the English teacher. All right. Well, what we got for headlines here?
So, gee whiz, in the ongoing saga of Okta, Muskrat.
Okta. Get off Okta.
Yeah. So now it's expanded, right? We've recently heard.
Yeah, they basically said... Well, first they blame some employee for like putting something on a Google Drive, which doesn't really excuse them, but I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, first of all, why don't companies lock down their devices so you can't log into it? Like even the companies I've worked for, like it's prompting me to sign into Google when I'm in a Google, it's like, dude, that's a bad idea.
Yeah, well, now what they said was, this is from a while ago, November 30th. Okta says hackers stole data for all customer support users in cyber breach. So it just keeps expanding. And don't forget, this is the same company that when one of their call centers got hacked, it's a third party, the hackers posted screenshots showing them getting into the network of Okta. So whatever the connectivity was to their call center, the hackers were able to traverse from the hack call center, third party, which you can say, okay, that's not Okta. But then they went like waltzing right into Okta's network and took like screenshots or something. I don't know.
I don't know why this isn't bigger news, because Okta is widespread, and there are a number of very huge companies that rely on it.
Yes.
And honestly, I know for a fact that some of these companies, at least outwardly, do not seem to care that. Either that or they're like working frantically on the back end to figure out how they can migrate off it, but it's not something you can just, because like a lot of their tools integrate, so you got proprietary tools that are integrated with Okta. And
so if I were to read the IT tea leaves, Okta, grew kind of fast. They put as much outsourced support as they could, didn't care about their internal operational security. And now they're paying for it because, remember, they're used as an MFA provider for a lot of businesses, so that makes them a huge target. And if their OPSEC is poor, they're just going to keep having these problems. So I guess we'll see in the next couple of months if they get hacked again.
Yeah, and where's the accountability? Because they
they're
fuck up
serious
and
about doing it.
everybody else suffers.
Oh, they're serious about fixing things. Oh, I bet.
Yeah. That's all you got to do to get out of these things. Yeah. You send a bulletin, you release a bulletin, you go all the way up to the president and the CEO, and I'm like, oh shit, all right, I'll type the email. I'll release the official bulletin to our customers. Like, we're very sorry. We take this very seriously. We're going to do everything in our power. And then you go and I'm not going to say it.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens in 2024, or maybe we'll hear something this year yet.
Yeah, it just keeps evolving, and it just keeps getting worse. So speaking of worse, Cisco lowers annual forecast on slowdown in new orders. This was mid-November.
Wait, they lower what?
They lowered their annual forecast.
Oh my goodness, gee.
Yeah, so
it ain't so, Cisco.
Yeah, the orders
Why
are
do you
starting
think that
to
is?
ease up, and I don't know. It could be partially the economy. It could be partially that Cisco sucks.
Oh, and Cisco, we love you, Cisco. The problem is you guys have been making some pretty poor decisions for the last 15 years.
Yeah, and I remember being at Cisco Live several years ago, and they were talking about the new age of Cisco, right? And they had this graphic up.
New age.
It was like, if you've been to Cisco Live, right? Like you go into the big seminar where the president, and I forget the dude's name, like they've had a couple, right? But he's like, well, this is the first 10 years, and here's companies that were big for 10 years, and then, look, the next 10 years, they disappeared because companies typically don't last beyond like 10 years. They lose their market share. They lose their prominence. And here's what we're going to do to overcome that. But, they really tried to position themselves as a security provider, but now, what the fuck is happening? And I wonder, Cisco, how long is, your name recognition going to continue to keep you afloat?
Right, especially because we know several companies that are actively looking to displace Cisco with their campus switching. So, there's a mountain of complaints about Cisco. And 2024 is going to be the year that we just create the nail Cisco to a wall show because, and the thing is, we do it because we love you, Cisco. You could be so much better.
It's tough love.
Yes, it's tough love. So Cisco in the late 90s and early 2000s had a chance to really focus on the service provider market, but they kind of gave that up. Now they do play in the service provider space, but they're nowhere near as big as Juniper and Alcatel-Lucent and those guys, they kind of ceded that territory because they doubled and tripled down on enterprise networks. And the saying goes, you never get fired for buying Cisco, and that's held on, right? And they probably could have coasted if they didn't let all the MBAs and all the bean counters they could have coasted the enterprise space, but the licensing, I'm going to say this again, stop dicking around with the licensing. It's the worst in the world. You've screwed yourself so much, people can't take it.
Well, and it didn't help that, they didn't have a clear vision when they started making changes to it. Because, now we're stuck on this DNA, type licensing. And, at least, they've made it, so they have the same type of structures for all their different technologies. They're rolling the same verbiage, I guess.
Yeah, they fixed that problem while adding others.
Yeah, but it's still shit. And it took them a long time to at least get that consistency,
True.
Because, there was, they had the SmartNet Total Care for a while, which was shit, and they had shit before that.
They changed things so much. You know what was really confusing for customers was Cisco One. Because everyone thought that meant they had all things you could think of, but no, it wasn't one. And
then they had enterprise agreements, which are still there,
but you need 3 or 4 of them to be in a real enterprise agreement. I complain so much to the Cisco SEs or SAs, the account executives, whatever. I'm like, this isn't an enterprise agreement if I have to buy 3 of them. Well, they're different things or different technologies. I'm like, what about Microsoft? I have 1. And then if I want to try out different things, I can without having it to engage you again. Oh, but that's all just one thing. No, Microsoft sells a lot of different stuff. And don't put me in a position to defend Microsoft. That's what makes me so mad. If Microsoft has a better enterprise agreement than you, then there's something wrong. You need to adjust yourselves.
Speaking of Microsoft, so this one came out, well, I guess it's been a while. I just found out about this recently, but published in Tom's Hardware. I'm sure published elsewhere as well. But Microsoft repositions 7 terabyte Project Silica glass media as a cloud storage solution.
Oh yeah, that's going to be great. Glass. This is going to be like Google Glass for storage.
Yeah, so I remember when I was reading this, like, I just thought,
they try to say that it's going to prevent ransomware, but you know that we've already got storage that can't be modified. So I'm not against this glass storage, but don't act like this is going to fix some major problem.
well, and like, okay, you can store a lot of data on it, great, but like they brought up, for instance, when they were interviewed, they asked, or at least they posed the question in some way, shape, or form, about what if a robot in these like massive data centers fell or dropped a slice of glass and
it'd be broke.
Well, I guess, and then the blog responds, it didn't discuss that possibility. It just seems like they're skirting the issue. I mean, it's fucking glass. Like they say, in contrast, data stored in glass with this natural resistance to water, electromagnetic pulses, extreme temperatures, and surface scratching.
I mean, to a point. Did you notice what they actually have to do to read the data? They use microscopy. This is basically reinventing microfinch or microfilm, but in a much more, I'm sure, compact way. And I'm all for it, but it's not going to prevent ransomware. Sure, if you store your data on a one-time writable medium, which glass is not the first, you won't get encrypted. Okay. They can still steal your data. I don't know.
Well, so they say this. One of the pros to this is it can be stable for thousands of years.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
So you think about like
we
tape,
can put our
tape drives
archives
and all that shit they used to do. Like they don't last. Like
the tape drives last, but not. I don't know what thousands.
But not thousands of years.
No.
So like with this, Microsoft can go on and like put all these drives next to that clock that Bezos built in that mountain.
Sure. And when the new Atlantis archives, this is going to be the new Atlantis archives, right? And it's going to be for the next civilization to find. And they're going to have to figure out how to read the glass. Sure. All right. We'll put all of our crappy data about everyone's like surfing history. And when some advanced civilization finds it, they'll see just how bad we were at like marketing. Like this is what their whole civilization was based on, sending ads to people. That's the pinnacle of human society in this age.
Speaking of the pinnacle of human society, Mashable.
Mashable.
1 month ago, they don't even have a timestamp on this story.
I like their potatoes.
Players in Roblox are joining digital pro-Palestine rallies.
Mm-hmm. Are they going to get censored too?
Oh, they might. But I just find it interesting that that you find these online social media and gaming communities that are just microcosms of things that are happening in the real world.
Yes, it is interesting.
Like if you've ever played Roblox or like watched somebody play Roblox, it's like extremely chaotic and it's a bunch of people.
Yeah.
I mean, at least when you swear, like I think it's probably a setting, but like at least they star out the stuff. But it's just stars everywhere because everybody's cussing at each other and they don't realize that you can't see the other person's cussing because they censor it.
So they're just like going nuts. So so in these virtual protests, is there a virtual cop coming around and beating them? No,
I don't know, but like you can do some pretty creative stuff in Roblox. I've seen where like there's probably people walking around with pro-Palestine T-shirts and costumes.
Roblox is interesting.
Yeah, and here they got a screenshot where they've got a Palestinian flag and advertisements for solidarity with Palestine.
Yeah,
and I don't see any Israel stuff there.
I'm sure there's some other pro-Israel protest, but let's just remember, peace is always the answer.
Yes, it is.
It's actually weird and very Orwellian that ceasefire is now considered bad. You ask for a ceasefire and you're somehow evil. Wait, what? No, sorry. Ceasefire is never evil. No matter what they try gaslighting you into.
Yeah, and I've even seen politicians in the U.S. who their message is one of peace. Like, we have to take an anti-war stance. And it's not particular to Israel-Palestine. It came before that. It comes with, like, Russia, Ukraine, Syria, things like that. Like, we got to figure out a way to de-escalate.
Right.
We shouldn't be involved in, like, worldwide conflicts as the United States. And when they say things like that, they just get raked over the coals, and I don't understand it.
It's weird. we've gone into some
because that's not the agenda of the people that.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, Wisconsin has the worst password security in America. Study says from
dumbfounded.
Published in this was looks like an Eau Claire publication online, but
that's weird.
October 21st, 2023. It's interesting that Wisconsin scored 0 of 100 for password security. So the worst score you could possibly get.
We couldn't even get one.
It says 80% of Wisconsinites reuse passwords. So I would think that you would get a little bit more than 0 because 20% of us aren't fucking stupid. And I'm proud to say I'm one of the 20% that don't reuse passwords, but I know a lot of people that do. Only 23.3% of Wisconsinites' passwords meet recommendations. And in the article, it says that 12 plus characters should be the minimum complexity. I believe the last time I looked and I was talking to you about this muskrat, I thought it was 16. I think it's grown beyond that, but it should be.
The more the merrier.
More the merrier.
All right.
Fox News 1 month ago. Again, I don't know because I'm looking at it in some Microsoft view, I think, but Jimmy Hoffa may be buried at site of demolished Major League Baseball stadium, according to a cold case group.
Wasn't that in Wisconsin?
Yeah, a nonprofit group of cold case crime investigators believed it has located a site in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where former Teamsters president Jimmy Hoffa is buried. The case breakers said a dying police sergeant scribbled instructions on an ace of spades playing card.
Wow.
Helped lead their years-long investigation to the old site of Milwaukee County Stadium in Wisconsin, according to a Wednesday press release.
That's insane.
So all those games I went to as a kid, I was sitting right on top of Hoffa.
On Hoffa, yeah.
So where is Geraldo right now?
Yeah, right. We need him to
to go break in there with a TV special.
Weren't they working on getting permission?
That was Al Capone's.
Yeah, his vault. But why not? Let's have him go dig a hole. So weren't they working on permission to dig this up? I haven't heard anything since then.
What's there on that site anymore?
It was a parking lot now, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, so they should be able to.
Yeah, I think they were working on it.
Huh.
Yeah. Are we on the hackernews.com one? The new Bluetooth flaw lets hackers take over Android, Linux, Mac OS, and iOS devices. Now, for Mac OS and iOS, you have to have previously paired to a Magic Keyboard for this vulnerability to work. But basically, people can connect a Bluetooth keyboard to your device without you knowing. Now, the fix has actually been in Linux. I don't know about Android for a while, but apparently they were disabled. So this also makes you wonder if the intelligence community has purposely created these kinds of vulnerabilities.
Well, people don't think about the security, I should say the threat surface of their peripherals. So several years ago,
right,
I stumbled onto a vulnerability with my Bluetooth keyboard on my computer, and there was a patch for it. You had to download firmware. But until you patched it, there was an exploit that you could, basically hack my computer through my Bluetooth keyboard, and I'm sure there's a lot more of those things out there, and this is kind of similar.
Well, get patched.
Yeah, you don't think about your keyboard or your mouse or anything like that. You just think, Bluetooth. But that's a vector.
That's true.
PlayStation is deleting TV shows players paid for.
Yes.
Thanks to Warner Brothers.
You will own nothing and like it, as the saying goes.
Yeah, this is
stuff you paid for.
This is December 2nd in Forbes, so this came out a couple weeks ago.
When are we going to create laws where if you actually buy something, they can't be taken away? And if it's a digital asset only, they need to support it for 50 years. This is getting ridiculous. They bought these TV shows.
Yeah, Sony's release says, due to our content licensing arrangements with content providers, you will no longer be able to watch any of your previously purchased Discovery content, and the content will be removed from your video library.
Oh, it's so horrible.
And do you get reimbursed for that?
Right, of course not. No, it's total horseshit. We need to fix this. I'm sorry, our Congress can't do anything because they're too busy with other stuff, it sounds like. What are they busy with, Mongoose?
Well, as of late, so here's the story out of NBC News. Senate staffer alleged by conservative outlets to have had sex in a hearing room is no longer employed.
Oh.
So, I mean, this is just the latest story, but the long and the short of it is I don't think this is an allegation because, well, unless they're alleging or like somebody's saying that, well, that social media post that I posted of me getting railed by my homosexual boyfriend and then him pissing on my back.
If it shows that.
Well,
No,
like,
that's
I
not
mean, so
confirmed.
I don't know if this staffer is denying that, and then maybe he's being framed.
Yeah, maybe it's all AI, but that's not the point.
But it's outrageous.
This
so
is one case where something actually got done in the Senate chambers. That's all I'm saying.
yeah,
Because otherwise, nothing's getting
you
done.
got to be pretty stupid to go and bang in the Senate hearing room and post it online. Like if you did that and you didn't post it online, nobody give a shit.
Well, if you've copulated at work, email us showpacketsandbolts@gmail.com. Packetsandbolts@gmail.com. We know it happens everywhere. And like I said, this is the first time in a long time that something got done in the Senate chambers. All right.
Yeah, speaking of, U.S. nuke reactor lab hit by gay furry hackers demanding cat-human mutants.
Yeah.
Yeah, you read that right.
That's a hacker group.
Demanding cat-human mutants.
And that's a hacker group called what?
That's the name of the hacker group.
Yeah.
Gay furry hackers. Well, that's how they describe themselves. I
Sure.
think they're actually affiliated with a firm called SiegedSec or a group called SiegedSec.
Sure.
And now we got a target on our back because we brought this up. But they've boasted, as of November 22nd, they've broken into America's biggest nuclear power lab's computer systems and stolen records on thousands of employees.
Wow.
Some of that data has already been leaked, it appears.
That is not good.
They also claim to have breached NATO's IT security on 2 occasions this year, and it has now hit the Idaho National Laboratory, the INL,
NATO.
which is run by the U.S. Department of Energy's Office of Nuclear Energy. So employees' social security numbers, physical addresses, and bank account data are among the information said to have been pinched.
Wow.
And the lab acknowledged this.
If anyone knows anything about old ASA code, NATO is just another way of saying Nat Zero. Nat Zero.
So this group, they said we're willing to make a deal with INL. If they research creating IRL cat girls, we will take down this post, the group said. The creation of real cat-human female hybrids is a frequently posted meme in certain corners of the internet, but it's not the laboratory's specialty.
The internet has no corners. That's how little they know.
So I'm trying to understand, is this group is this a hacktivist group trying to stop people from breeding cats and humans? Or is our Department of Energy complicit in the breeding of cats and humans?
Well, I think both.
Or is this just a really weird story? Next.
Could be trolling.
Today's Sunday. There's football on. And speaking of football, as of November 29th, reported on the WND, a free press for a free people since 1997.
All right.
Probably attracting demons, Exorcist warns against attending Taylor Swift concerts.
Right. Who said this?
So Father Daniel Rehill, who serves as the exorcist of the Diocese of Nashville, that's Nashville, Tennessee.
Is this a real Catholic priest?
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. And he claims that Swift has incorporated elements of witchcraft into her performances. And there's a picture of her wearing a very witch-like cloak. Rehill said in a video for Church Pop that witches try to harness energy with the use of fire, black capes, and spherical objects that represent the Earth's elements. The problem with the concert is that whether Taylor knew she was trying to imitate witches or in fact was doing some kind of a cult ceremony during the show is sort of irrelevant to the demons, he explained. Rehill explained that although Swift is an incredibly talented and influential artist, it would be best for impressionable young girls to steer clear of her concerts. The demons will take deep note of what she's doing and how she's doing it and who she's influencing, he explained. So when they imitate these rituals with these orbs and these black capes, that looks like something you'd find in the woods.
Wait, what? What woods have that?
Well, that's where witches go.
Oh, I
Everybody
gotcha.
knows-
Some sort
everybody
of
knows.
witch circle. Oh, all right.
That's why you go
So do you
camping.
think they're taking notes with pen and paper, or they switch to digital these days?
In human blood, muskrat.
Oh, but what are they writing it on?
human flesh.
Oh, okay. Like a grimoire made of human leather. I gotcha.
Yes, like the what's it?
So that's quality. Can you find that on Etsy?
I don't know. I'm sure you could.
The demonic Etsy.
Or
All right. So do you think the Pope's calling this guy up and saying, you're not helping? Can you please stop giving these statements?
I don't know. I bet the Pope doesn't know anything about this because this is just some priest.
Well, the cardinal, someone's got to be like, okay, guy.
The bishop should be like, what the fuck? But you know how the Catholic Church is when it comes to exorcists? Like, they don't want to know about it.
Kind of.
Right? So
dirty
supposedly every diocese has an appointed exorcist.
Correct.
So there's nothing saying that
But do you
Father
think this guy's a
Rehel has
legit
done...
or just a wacko they assign as the
there's
exorcist?
wackos everywhere. No, he probably is assigned the diocese exorcist because, like I said, I think every diocese technically has to have one.
But
assigned.
you think he might not be
But most
legit.
of them have never performed an exorcist or wouldn't be prepared to do one. They're just the ones that are appointed to do it. And if they have a need to do it, the higher ups don't want very much to do with it, other than saying, like, have you gone through the proper processes? Because technically, with exorcisms in the Catholic faith, you have to have very rigorous medical and psychological studies because, of course, it just seems insane. And so they're trying to preserve some amount of credibility. And, of course, they don't want to go through the steps to exorcise somebody who's just clinically insane.
Yeah. Well, if you've been to a Taylor Swift concert and you feel like you've been, you have demonic obsession, which is a precursor to possession, email the show packetsandbolts@gmail.com. Packetsandbolts@gmail.com. We will talk to you. I don't know if we'll have a priest on hand. All right. Now, coming up for our main event here, Midnight Swami. Who is Midnight Swami? Myron Fett, a.k.a. Midnight Swami, a South Bend-based music producer and audio engineer, is making waves in the music scene. With soulful melodies, hard-hitting drums, and infectious rhythms, he crafts captivating beats that embody contemporary genres. Known for his meticulous attention to detail, Midnight Swami is also a sought-after audio engineer, elevating tracks to professional levels, collaborating with emerging talents and established artists. He continues to push boundaries and evolve his sound. All right, we're sitting down with Swami, a.k.a. Myron, a.k.a. Midnight Swami. Thanks for coming on the Packets and Bolts podcast.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so we were looking at your video regarding Sweetwater this week, and since we're both musicians, and I think probably both of us have liked Sweetwater in the past, but at least me, I've noticed some changes in the recent years. I thought it was very interesting, so I reached out to you to come and talk about this because I'm curious of what's going on over there, what all the challenges that have been dealt with. Which your video obviously laid some of those out. But before we dive into any of that, how did you get started in the industry and music in general?
Wow. So when it comes to starting with music, it definitely started very early on. That was a very early passion. I had realized in like elementary school, there was they used the recorder or, like a plastic flute. Right. And so they had a belt system there and kind of like Taekwondo or karate. And the top belt you could get was gold belt. And I remember I did the test for gold belt and my teacher was so sad when she told me, no, you can't. You missed one note. And you can't get you can't get the gold belt. So I think it just stuck with me. Like it's something where it's like, okay. And I kept that passion going into just furthering into my high school and middle school. It's something I stuck with. I ended up going to like cello, then like upright bass, and then I ended up going into like electric guitar and electric bass, and just eventually got into the knack of recording and really interested in that. Got the basic setup back in the day, the audio box 2i2 and the audio box 2-channel audio interface. And you remember those, if you remember those, they were extremely noisy, but I just made it work. I plugged my guitar in and made a whole bunch of riffs, and then eventually kept that interest, studied more into like classical guitar and reading sheet music, and then went for a degree in music media production at Ball State University. Got a lot of hands-on experience with, a multi-million-dollar studio. Their facility is absolutely insane, and they had really amazing professors once I got like further into the program and I was able to do the more complicated classes and learn about not only how to use some of these consoles and outboard gear that they had and the technology, but they also had like human computer interfacing classes with one of my professors, so you could do really advanced in-depth programming with Max MSP and Ableton, or learning how to program contact libraries and reactor libraries for native instruments types of plugins. So there was a lot of really awesome education that was available. Now, this is where things get interesting, because this is right around the time when I'm looking for a job. It's my senior year. So I'm like looking at what's available, and Sweetwater comes into the picture. So Sweetwater, with Ball State, with other colleges, they do show up to their programs, and they'll offer like, they'll have like a seminar or a couple of small meetings where people can go and learn about the company.
Like a job
and learn
fair.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, they get very close with Sweetwater, and then so that the VP of Human Resources was in my senior project. So like they were basically already seeing what I was doing before I really did like a phone interview, and then I did a phone interview and did all that. But when I did the phone interview, I'd also asked them, hey, I see this opportunity over the summer for Interlochen Center for the Arts. And they, when I told Sweetwater, they were like, yeah, absolutely, 100% do it. So with Interlochen, it's like right near Traverse City in Michigan. And it's a K through 12 school for music, and it's international. But what's interesting is they had showcase with like famous artists. So Diana Ross performed there, Jethro Tull, Trace Adkins, Salt and Peppa, OK Go. Like I was helping out with those types of events that were going on there, and it was a K through 12 school, so it was kind of weird. You're like sleeping in a dorm with another person, but then you have to go like wake up at 8 o'clock, if not earlier, go out and set up. You had like a break during the day, watch the show, and then tear everything down and do it all over again after, work until 1 o'clock. And it was in the summer of Michigan, so it's just like,
wow,
it's pure nutsack, like just purely so humid and raining. But it was a great experience, because then when I went to Sweetwater, that's the thing, is they use a lot of your name, your likeness, your experience to sell you. Yeah. And you as the sales engineer. So that's why they were 100% okay with me doing it. And it was a great experience, like honestly learning how to set up line arrays, how to correctly wrap cables and put them in cases that are set up to be logistically perfectly packed out into the back of a semi. So like learning how a lot of the industry actually operates when it comes to not only a venue, but then them working with other partners to do live sound or just to do backline for the other instruments. Like there's always multiple companies usually involved when it comes to like a major production. Even if, the place has high-end gear, a lot of times a major artist is going to bring their own.
And I noticed
if they're touring.
And I noticed on your website is swamisden.com, right?
Yeah, that is correct.
Yeah, I noticed in your bio that you've worked with, you mentioned Diana Ross, but is that where you also got to meet and work with Jethro Tull? I think you have Paul Schaefer from the Letterman Band. Trace Adkins.
So a lot of them, you don't really get to meet them as personal with what I did there. Now, Paul Schaefer I did, because him and his band, they were in like a smaller stage. It was a smaller set, and it was a very intimate set anyways. And getting to meet Paul Schaefer was kind of like one of those moments where you don't realize how tall people are or like who they really are until you get to meet
Is he tall?
the people. No, he's very short. Like
Yeah,
he was
he
a
looks
lot
short on
shorter
TV,
than I
yeah.
thought. But no, but that's what I mean is a lot of times you see someone who's like, oh, they're pretty short on TV, and then you actually see them, and you're like, oh wow, you're a lot shorter than I thought.
But
It
he
just
seems like
was
a real character though. Like he must have been a fun guy.
Oh, yes, he was awesome to talk to. And then on the other side, it was like Trace Adkins. Like I thought he was tall, but he's like he's like really tall,
Huh.
And I didn't even get up close and personal with him. Like I saw him all the way back in wherever we could stand just to see the show. But that was a very interesting and weird experience because I'm working at a K through 12 camp in Michigan that just has these major artists coming through, and their main stage is on a lake. So like the Kresge Auditorium is technically outside. It's concrete with seats. It's like a 4,000 seat auditorium. But then on I think it's Green Lake or Duck Lake because it's the interlocking literally means in between two lakes. So like it's on one of those two lakes in Michigan. People will pull up on their yachts behind the venue and they'll like open it out so people will catch the show back there. And that's what was so interesting about it is you're going there. It's like a small stipend. Yeah, they pay for your room and board, and in your time off, like you could go do sailing classes. You could go, like you could go out on the lake. And I was like, what? So I took advantage of that too, and I learned how to. I think I did a little bit of kayaking, but then I think they had like sailing. And I was able to do like sailing classes with people, and so it was like a fun experience.
Yeah.
You're like, what is this? But then it was also like a really intense like you got to do backline and got to lift giant cases on wheels. And the other thing too is I'm a big dude, so like of course I'm doing that. Like it's not. Sometimes when you work with a live sound crew, they hire people, but if you're a bigger person, trust me when I say they're going to be looking at you like, hey, can you help? Like, come over here. Like, we need to get this up here.
Yeah, you got to lift all the heavy speakers and subs and all that, right?
Yeah. Like, it was always me and the other biggest guys that that would have to lift like the really extra heavy stuff. And I feel like it took a toll on me over the years. But honestly, I realized sitting down at a desk at Sweetwater took the most, man. Like,
really?
It really did. Like, and I think that that's also worth going more into, which it feeds into the mental health aspect of why sometimes it became bad working there. And it's not totally their fault. I have to acknowledge, my side of it too, like my involvement in it and entertaining some of it. But I think we have to understand, like I was explaining earlier, I'm coming fresh out of college. And this is my first real job, like real job. I mean, I worked at Meijer, which is like the Walmart of the Midwest for people who are not from around here. And I was cleaning shit out of toilets and pushing carts, and it just for nothing, like $7.25, $7.85 an hour, because it's nothing here in Indiana. And I came from that going to school to then finding, hey, this looks like an amazing career. Well, I'm going into the amazing career part of it, and yeah, the Sweetwater University training was difficult. It's like even after you went for that degree, if you're going straight into Sweetwater, like you're going to school like 3 times as hard as what you just did in like 3 months, because it was like doing a master's program plus sales in one like 3-month training that was paid. So you get extremely educated on a lot of stuff that you thought you knew. It kind of like comes back and you realize it wasn't the truth. Like a lot of people would have issues with understanding impedance or wattage or maybe like certain pieces of gear and the history behind them and why they're important or why certain people use certain microphones for certain applications. And when you start to learn all the stuff that they teach you in Sweetwater University, you're like, okay, it's a lot, to the point where some people definitely got burnt out or they didn't make it through the sales training. I would say most people did, but I will have to say, like, everybody at the time that I was coming on board, I think it was right around that time where the quality was still really high for who is allowed in and who's like, who they were hiring, because they weren't expanding as much as they were in 2020 at the time that when I was hired in 2017. Like, they were growing. That company realistically has never seen a downturn. Like, they've done really well as a company their entire existence. And that's what you have to commend them for, is like, they've always done the best business. But it got to this point where I'm sitting at a desk, I'm over 300 pounds. I feel like the people around me are just picking on me or just don't respect what I do, and they're supposed to be a part of my team and working with me. And then on top of that, I'm, speaking to a manager that is not too kind on, just being very blunt, not too kind on necessarily how I'm feeling or what is going on. And I just reached a breaking point because I realized that year, I think what really set it in was seeing an email saying, hey, we went from like 900 something K. It was definitely like 950 or no million, excuse me, 950 million to like over $1 billion in 1 year.
Wow.
And that was COVID.
So speaking of COVID, I mean, can you step back and tell us, how this all transpired? I know in your video you talked about the ozone isotope promotion and how that put a lot of strain in conjunction with COVID. Can you explain that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not the fact that they were giving a good service to the people. It was the fact that right when they still had the promotion going, they still had the promotion triggered. That was immediately when Indiana went on lockdown. That was immediately when everybody had to work remote. So the thing about working remote there is they had been saying that they didn't have remote access for everybody, or they didn't have that when a lot of things were being questioned with, hey, should we even be in the office right now? Because the office space, everybody's working in cubicles near each other.
Right.
So, they were really pushing for everybody to be in the building at that time. And then it forced into lockdown. And guess what? The next day, it was remote access. And the funny part is we all knew remote access exists, but it was only for the senior sales engineers who have been there 10, 20 years, and they're checking their deals, checking all of their, clientele and stuff when they're on vacation or off doing something, because when they're not there, other people are supposed to follow up. However, like, sometimes certain clients just, they're only going to work with that person, which is fair. Yeah. And it could be really important stuff. It could be a school, it could be a church, it could be whatever, something that spends millions of dollars, and they need somebody to directly support it and help them. Now, would I say that's everybody? No. That wasn't my business. My business was more, I wasn't making 100K, but I had a very consistent customer base, and a lot of my customer base was guitar players, which is that's a very difficult customer to work with because of how particular you could be with Sweetwater, right? You literally could pick the cereal, and you could be like, this cereal versus this cereal. Ooh, I don't like the neck on this one.
This one weighs half a pound more, so I want this other cereal. Yeah.
You were right
I
on
want
the
a
money,
bone nut,
like,
and I need the pluck job on my frets.
He's a bass player.
Yes. No, but that's exactly what I would hear, like, all the time. But the thing is I was somebody who listened to that because I'm a guitar player, and I get it. So I would always make an effort to listen to those people because I didn't want it to be returned.
Right.
And at the same time, like, I would much rather make sure if I'm selling you a guitar, it's the one you at least wanted or that you liked, or you at least have the expectation of knowing what it is and that you can talk to me at any time if it isn't what you like or something happened, just making sure that line of communication is open. And I think that this is what is now happening, is that, okay, it all exploded right around that time with COVID. And the thing that's crazy to me is knowing that it went to lockdown and then still not talking to Isotope about possibly delaying the promotion. Or like it was like literally lockdown and then boom, the promotion kicked.
Yeah, and I wonder if they even had that conversation at an organizational level, as far as, like you said, contacting Isotope and saying, "Can we delay this?" Or if they thought, we can't backtrack because we've already committed to this. But see, we're IT guys here at Packets and Bolts, and you might have listened to some of our episodes, but I at least personally am very interested in the, kind of the narrative that you have of, COVID came about, and then everybody's in the building except for the senior members, and all of a sudden, now they don't have a choice, and they send everybody.
Well, no. The senior members were definitely in the building. Like it was like if you could be in the building, it was better because the remote access was very laggy. And that's the thing is like, okay, how is it that you're this big, you are this tied and close to the government and have this much awareness, and you talk to the politicians about what's going on in the community, right? And you're somebody who donates to this community, and you're telling me that you couldn't have spent more time and more planning on the server access and making sure that things were running smooth for multiple employees instead of just expanding.
Well, it was,
and then doing all.
And
that.
we remember being in the thick of that as IT guys, right? So we're network engineers, so we're the ones who that type of problem falls on, right, Muskrat?
And we've seen businesses not support their own infrastructure many times.
Yeah, and I think a lot. I mean, I think that there certainly should have been some projections and some preparation for that, but you wouldn't believe the number of companies and businesses that were not prepared whatsoever, to the point that, and this is to the fault of Sweetwater, I don't know how long the systems and the remote access were so slow, but vendors were basically saying, we're going to waive and give you kind of temporary free, licensing. So that you can deploy and scale up, because this is a huge global pandemic and we need to support you businesses.
Well, then let me come at it from this perspective, because there's another aspect that I'm now thinking about is like, okay, so I think one, you're right. There's a level where they don't know, but the thing is that Sweetwater uses a system called 4D, and they have the largest 4D database ever built. And it's like 40, 50 plus years of archive, probably the most in-depth information you're going to find on products too. Because like their system, there's stuff if the manufacturer messed up in a manual, or like something was weighed differently, or like, we find out that it says in the manual it's line, but then we talked to the manufacturer and it was supposed to be unbalanced. They would write those kind of notes and have that kind of information available in their system, and they communicate directly with the manufacturers. Like, you had a lot of autonomy as a sales engineer to like get to the different parts of the company you needed to get the information you needed. So like there's a lot of things where it's like there's a lot of responsibility put on you as a person, and then if you're working remote, and if you were on Mac, you actually had better control because the software that they used was Mac-based. Their whole system is Mac-based. I was on a custom-built PC that I had just built maybe like a few months before all that, and I was having horrible lag, and it was just because I was on PC. Like, I had talked to other people that were on PC, and they had the same issue. So it was like, even using the workarounds that they had, I couldn't make those calls. I wanted to, but it was like the whole system was just so bogged down, and me trying to figure out, okay, all these workarounds we had to create because of the nature of what's going on. Like, it makes me wonder now, it being the largest 4D database ever created, could they have possibly, even if you gave them 6 months, could they have scaled that?
Right.
That's a good question. I didn't even think about it that way. It's like they had it enough for, 50 people that would probably, out of like 250 that have been there for a long time. Like, they could probably manage that. And I'm talking like admins and the the other sales engineers that had access and stuff like that. Whereas like now you have to scale it to what is their company size now? They were probably at almost like 1,500, 2,000 employees at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that company is huge, and a lot of people do not realize that it's. If you ever go to the facility, man, it is massive. And at that same time that that's going on, they built their fifth warehouse, scaled it, like filled the entire thing with stock, and then built it for expansion too. When they built it, and then within like 2 months expanded it to fill out even more stock. So and that's what I'm saying is that they read the writing on the wall. They know Guitar Center and a lot of these other companies are bankrupt and are, they don't necessarily pay their bills on time. And Sweetwater wasn't that. Now, Sweetwater had always been good on that. So I really think in a way, too, there are aspects where I'm realizing now I see both sides of they kind of helped people in the industry, but at the expense of their own people.
Right.
At the expense of making more money.
Well, what year do you think that it really started taking? So you said that during the pandemic. Was it like immediate? Was it, did it take a while after the pandemic for things to really get, bad for the employee side?
I would say that was right when I would say like there's always been some things, like every corporation. Mm-hmm. There's always some people doing some weird crap or just something gross, and you're just like, it's almost out of control, especially in a weird state like Indiana where it's an at-will state. So it's politics at that point when it's at will, and so I had to recognize like, okay, when now I'm not agreeing with how I'm being treated and the fact that I feel like I'm drowning, because that didn't feel like that kicked in until months of it being remote access, and then being like, well, because of the nature of where we are in Indiana and the fact that we're a warehouse, we operate like Amazon, we can have people in the building. Like, so there's another aspect of that too, where like they're doing all the stuff. Like they're telling us, if you can come to the building, please do, because you're gonna get more done. We're not forcing you, but. And right. I literally if I still have the photo, I know I deleted a whole bunch of photos on my Facebook. I have a photo of me sitting on the phone with a customer and the wall coming down. And them expanding the building to put a door.
Wow.
And I have a photo of me, like, there's literally like a backhoe or something on the other side of the wall and just a hole in the wall. And I'm just sitting there like, thumbs up, because I was just like, is this my life right now? Is that you guys don't care so much as to where my desk is? You're not telling me to move it or anything. You're just like, keep it there, and all this expansion's going on.
Yeah,
like,
and these are all hallmarks of a company that rapidly expands, right? I mean, the picture of the wall coming down is like an extreme illustration of this. And typically my mind goes to, okay, rapidly expanding companies, like you often encounter IT challenges because they grow without proper process and thinking and design.
Yeah, right.
And then we have to go and clean up the tech debt and the garbage. But what it also makes me think about is, maybe this epiphany where all of a sudden the the leaders in the organization are starting to take a new view of their employees, a backward one, I think, where they're not trusting. It's more of that theory X management style where you don't trust your employees and you're trying to micromanage them. I mean, maybe that's also a product of rapid expanding companies. And
yeah, there is that. There is also the other side of that, which is employees that aren't necessarily doing good things. I mean, there was one, I'm not going to mention his name, but when he got fired and we saw the email, the clap was so loud it could be heard in other people's phone calls. And they sent out a mass email saying, don't clap for people when they're leaving. However, we knew how this person was putting customers in their name and making other customer records and not telling other people about it and doing these kind of shady things. So there are aspects where, yeah, there are some employees that were not doing good by their own people, even like
Right.
the people around them, because it's commission. And it's something where it's commission with a base pay. And really, if you were making base pay, you weren't doing the job. Like, I guarantee you that, just because if you're doing the job and taking care of everything, I would think low ball be making 40 to 50K a year. And it was, it was still stressful, don't get me wrong, even if you were just managing. But I had to recognize, like, it's a very, very high expectation for what they want you to do. And then they give you all of the crazy expectation, but then they give you all the sweets too. So literally, you can go check out gear. You can go download software to learn more about the products to help sell the products. You could literally go to office hours, and with office hours, you would show up. The vendors would show their new products that are about to come out. I mean, even though Sweetwater dropped the ball with the Moog 1, and that guy never got fired for doing that and basically leaking the schematics to the head of a Gear Sluts forum.
Oh, really?
Wow.
I did not know that.
And we were at the time, Sweetwater was the launch partner with Moog 1. Like, they were the launch partner with Moog to launch the Moog 1. Now, did it still sell? Absolutely, because it was the Moog 1. And I got the opportunity to test the prototype out before it came out, and it was insane. Like, just seeing the first polyphonic analog synth with all those Moog filters and all of like that Moog has come out with since what?
Well,
the 80s?
I can't.
Yeah.
I can't believe there wouldn't be a lawsuit from that vendor to have your schematics leaked out in the public forum.
Dude. The thing is I believe Moog was just sharing that information with us because they trusted us.
Right.
And but here's the thing, though. You know why I don't think there was a lawsuit? Because there was enough invoices.
Yeah, true.
Yeah,
True.
yeah. I
Talks.
definitely sold at least one or two of them. Everybody did. Like, it was inevitable. Like, they're amazing. But at the same time, I had to recognize, like, so this is what's going on. Like, there is a lot of stuff like that. I mean, the other one too. There's a lot of stuff where you would be walking into a meeting, and technically, you walking into the meeting would be an NDA.
Yep.
And yeah, there was one with Behringer where, now everybody wonders why Behringer only works with mainly Sweetwater as their number one. And then all these other companies or all these mom and pop shops can no longer sell Behringer products, and they have to go to a super vendor or whatever they called it at the time. And I just had to recognize that a lot of this stuff is pressure for you to sell products. That's it. Like, literally cookies, free coffee, swag, free giveaway. Like, I had won speakers one time showing up. I had, sometimes you could go do lunch and learn where you could, like, say API or a console company came through and they would literally allow them to set up a console in one of the rooms, and then they would do a training where, you'd have like paid lunch from their cafeteria, and then you could go learn about companies' products or stuff like that. So there was really that balance of like, wow, I can learn so much. I can meet amazing people. Like, I got to meet Ryan West, who he's done mixing for Jay-Z, Rihanna, Eminem, like everybody. I got to meet Alan Sides. He did Michael Jackson, like there was tons of people that I got to meet in the industry too, just showing up to those office hours and learning about products and, yeah, getting some cookies and some free swag. But then it turns into depression, and 310 pounds later, I'm realizing, like, my back's fucked up. I'm not doing as well as I really wanted to be, and I have to now understand what aspects I needed to take self-accountability for, but then the other aspects where other people are just adding more on the plate, and now I have to be like, okay, I can't handle this anymore. So, for anybody that watched the video and thought, like, oh, I couldn't handle the job or whatever, I was still making the 80 to 100 calls. I mean, I didn't on my last day, but, like, realistically, it was recognizing like, okay, am I gonna, as much as a customer could talk crazy to me, am I gonna let the people I'm supposed to trust around me talk to me sideways, and
Right.
think that I'm just gonna stick around and be okay with the narrative that's being pushed? No, that's what I think it came down to. And I think the more concerning part was not the fact that the video blew up this past month or two, but the fact that when I launched the video, if you go early in the comments, I worked with some of those sales engineers. Like, I knew them 100%. I've talked to them multiple times. Like, they said the same thing.
Yeah.
And, I'm also not going to just assume this, though, but me being in Indiana and me knowing the nature of this state, I also think that me being a white person made it a little bit easier of what treatment I got. Because, I've talked to other people that were fired and let go of the company that weren't white, and their experiences were definitely a lot more strict than mine. From what experiences I heard, like the kind of expectations. Now, granted, they they want you to meet certain metrics, so that's where you were right. I had to start recognizing the systems they put in place were designed to micromanage, to the point where one of the managers, I remember him when he was my manager, I would do these orders and he would send me an email saying, hey, did you follow up on these orders? And I would go through and double check them. And I was like, did you look at the notes? Yeah. I literally have a note in there saying that I talked to them. And then he would just message me back, thanks.
Right. Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's crazy. How much time has he taken out of his day to do that? Jeez.
Yeah, right. No, exactly. And, I had to realize that this is what became the problem. It wasn't the sales engineer. It wasn't the systems in place. It was the fact that the people above, they're very much looking down from their tower and trying to just dictate what's going on versus actually looking at what's going on and trying to address the problem.
It's completely out of touch, and unfortunately, it's way too common. In the past, we covered, I think, Muskrat, we had an episode about the Great Resignation, right? That was a couple of years ago around the COVID time, but after the Great Resignation, which was a term they coined that basically said that, people, after getting the opportunity to work from home in light of COVID and seeing that they're more marketable than they were, a lot of people, there was a mass exodus from their jobs, and the emphasis went more toward the employee. And so the companies that kind of rose to the top, when things resettled, are the ones that understood the importance of a proper work-life balance.
Right.
And when you're in the upper echelons of an organization, a company, an enterprise, you don't always have a bird's eye view of the way the people with the boots on the ground that are doing the work that are making your company money, like what their experience is. They're relying on their underlings to report that. And so this is just a characteristic of poor communication in Sweetwater, I think. And, something's got to change. And it's not just Sweetwater, it's a lot of companies. And you said yourself that Sweetwater's doing well and it's still a good company. But if they don't recognize the importance of a work-life balance for the people that make the money, like you said, more people are going to leave, and they're going to end up with a net loss in the talent pool.
Right.
You know what's interesting? I think they do recognize. I just think what they do to mitigate the problem is more of a Band-Aid than an actual healing solution. And that's kind of more of what I had to recognize, too, of why I was leaving. Because at the time, they were kind of boasting, oh, it's okay. They brought in people to talk about taking mental health days off and taking time off and about those types of things. So that's why I recognize, they do recognize what's going on. But the thing that was more concerning is it sounded like instead of, actually offering a different way of taking time off or being able to talk to somebody, it's kind of like, oh, you just hired new HR people. and you hired new managers that were from Guitar Center, and you plucked a whole bunch of new people that were from Guitar Center from other. Yeah, exactly. So it was now that I'm just gonna say it all because everybody's been afraid to say it, and I'm not. I'm done. I recognize that it's to the point where if they were going to try and come at me, they should have already done it, because
Well,
it's, I don't think that they truly understand that the people are now catching wind of it. At first I made that video just to get it off my chest and thank the sales engineers that worked with me and help them understand, like, I didn't just leave one day because I was like, oh, I'm crazy. Oh my God. It was like a culmination of, my own life and my own decisions. Absolutely. I have to take accountability for that. And I felt like, when you make a video like event, it's hard to just say, oh, I'm taking self-accountability, So that's why I'm glad that at least I'm here, and you guys can at least see my face in this call. I don't know if it's being recorded like that, but I'm a lot healthier now. Like, I'm definitely kept at least 60, 70 pounds of that off, changed a lot of my habits, and really just focused on being the best version of myself that I can every day. And I felt like that's what was killing me, is I was somebody who really focused on helping people, and that was my business strategy. And when I started recognizing it wasn't working for me, and I'm just feeling like my team just doesn't support me in what I'm doing now, I'm just like, I'm out. I'm done.
Yeah, you can't be 100 miles per hour. Even as invested and as much as you may love your career, you can't be 100 miles an hour like 24/7 every second of the day, because you will burn out. And in fact, there's a scientific principle that somebody turned me on to a couple of years ago, called the Pomodoro effect, where, this has implications more like they talk about for study, but really what it's about is the brain actually functions better when it takes breaks, and that your brain efficiency will actually decrease if you go beyond a certain threshold and you keep plugging. So you're going to mentally drain yourself. That's what it manifests as when you're done. And then you're going to have mental health issues, or you're going to have physical health issues. So people need to be cognizant that you need to get away and do something else. As much as you may want to be a workaholic, or if you really love your job, this is a message to everybody out there. It's like, don't be a workaholic. Like, take care of yourself, right? It's important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the big one.
What I noticed is, and I'm not sure if this lines up with your experience or with what I'm going to share with my experience with Sweetwater, but in 2021, it looks like a private equity group took a majority share of Sweetwater. And I think private equity firms are the bane of all good companies, because they usually turn it into garbage. Now, so far in my recent orders with Sweetwater, they still send the candy, so that they haven't taken that yet. But just wait for that to disappear, because that's going to be like some little bean counter saying, I'm going to save 5 cents per order.
You get one less package of Smarties per order. Yeah.
But the thing I've noticed, and this is where I actually wondered if they had been bought out, and again, maybe this is just the pandemic, but my sales engineer, so I was never really a Sweetwater person. Mongoose turned me on to them. And I always try to use a local music store unless they don't have it in stock. Guitar Center took a turn for the worst sometime mid 2010s. They went, they kind of like, you would go there and they wouldn't have anything. Well, I'm not just talking about the bankruptcy, but like they wouldn't really be like as supportive or anything, and no one was around, and it was really weird. So I started shopping at Sweetwater. And all of a sudden I got an email from a sales engineer. I'm like, what? And I'm used to sales engineer in the technology world. I'm like, well, that's kind of cool, I guess. Maybe if I'm doing something, it's going to spend a ton. And then I got a phone call. I'm like, what's going on? This guy called me, and he wanted to know if he could help me with any other things. Well, the short end of that story is that if I'm ever going to spend a lot of money, I'm not, unless there's a place locally that has all the stuff I need right now, which I probably won't. I'm going to go to Sweetwater. I'm not going to do Online Guitar Center. I'm not going to do, what's the other one? Musician's Friend, which I think they're the same company now.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to Sweetwater.
Yeah.
Well, I tried getting a price. I contacted my sales engineer, because I'm convinced that for a scalable sound system, you want to do unpowered speakers. I know Mongoose hates that. And I reached out to my sales engineer to get me a matched system, Yamaha, with amps, unpowered speakers, etc. I think he gave me one response after a big delay about getting some details from me, and then never heard back from him. Well, then I gave up on that, because I learned that, probably we'll just go with powered speakers for now. So I got some other ones, but very unresponsive now. I don't even know if the guy works there anymore. It could be a fake
Well, yeah.
pretending to use his email. I
Like,
don't
again,
know.
like AI, but it's
Yeah.
interesting you say that because I've had 3 big orders in the last maybe 2 to 3 years, and the first one,
Okay.
I bought a bass, and my sales engineer was very communicative. She was very good, and she was very caring about how my experience was, and
Yeah.
perfect scores, right? She was great. My next order, I got one call, and we talked over, because whenever I order a guitar, I want like some custom work done to make sure the action's right, everything's right to my specifications. So I'll spend the extra money for that.
Right.
So he takes those details, and that was fine. I didn't hear from him again. My last order, I didn't get any call whatsoever, and it was fine. But it just seems to me like there's been, and the sample size is small, but I feel like there was like a decrease
Yeah.
there.
And it could be backlog, overworked, or, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a really good question now because, mind you, it's crazy that I left in 2021, made the video in 2023, and it took now for everybody to realize what's going on and kind of the nature of that. So that kind of does lead me into why I've created the business that I have now just started and kind of opened up, which is called Songwriter Support. And I really do think that not only when I left, like it left a hole in that company, but at the same time, like the hole that has been left in the industry with the sales engineer experience with Sweetwater. Because, if you were a very high end studio or like, because I even worked with some very high end clients that were managers or artists and things like that that had access to funds and needed certain pieces of gear, right? Like you would have a direct relationship where somebody would help you down to the cable. Like it was like
Yeah.
we helped you patch your studio, and sometimes depending on how well known the sales engineer is with doing that, they had a fee to go fly out and go custom patch the studio. Like it was somebody who really did assist you with building your studio. And I think now, because of how cost effective it is to get recording equipment, how cost effective stuff is, a lot of the questions that you ask, Sweetwater's now going to look at as training. And guess what? Sweetwater doesn't do training, and they will tell you that. That was the thing that they really made a point about, is like there's certain things that are technical support. Like, yeah, if you had an issue with a pickup or like a pot was loose or some, on a guitar, or even like a microphone preamplifier or an audio interface, something like that, that's absolutely that. But if it's like, hey, I just bought this compressor and I bought this guitar pedal and I bought all these cables, like how do I route this
Exactly.
into my system?
See, that's
Exactly,
what's
that's
missing.
training now.
That's
Yeah. So
training.
so your new
But I sold you all the gear.
right. So
It's like yeah.
So your new company is making part of its business model that more of the customer support and more of that training aspect that you feel is lacking from Sweetwater as of late. Is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely, but also adding the creative aspect to it as well. Not just being technical in the virtual studio session. I offer like lyric and songwriting coaching, sound design, and production coaching as well. Or also, it's kind of like, because the initial model I had was virtual studio assistant, so I could essentially team viewer into your computer if really need be. Go check out your buffer size, your settings, what your computer is operating at, see if it makes sense to update or do things like that, optimize the computer, and then show you methods that help you with either optimizing your recording setup or like techniques or just getting songs done. Because I think that the other thing I learned was there's a lot of people that had crazy studios and a lot of gear, and guess what? You never heard anything from them at all, because they were so busy working at Sweetwater that they were burnt out by the end of the day, and they had a wife and kids. They had a whole life. And like the top sales guy at Sweetwater, who I think one year he made like $600K, like insane money. He wasn't even really doing music at the end of the day. Like, he sold music gear, and that's why he did well. And that has to kind of show the nature of what happened, but also the nature of why they probably hired people like me. Is because if you hire people that seem like they care and do a good job, even if they don't do the performance that you think that they should do, which is 100K plus or whatever for everybody, like I'm just starting to recognize you keep those people in there. So it's like,
Right.
hey,
Yeah.
people will see that there's customer service. There's somebody who cares. Because I'll give you a prime example. There was a sales meeting, and I remember just being so livid about it because I take this call from a guy, and I'm asking him who told you about Sweetwater. He was just trying to rush me into helping him get what he needed. So I was like, okay. So I basically did the whole order, and it was a system. It was a power amplifier, cables, passive speakers. I don't even think it was the mounts, but it was a full live sound system design. Once I finally got to the end, I was able to get the referral, which is what they did because a lot of, original Sweetwater business was working one-on-one, and I would be working with entire families. I would be working with a direct friends of people. It was like direct relationships, and that was actually how most of my leads came in. It wasn't like from Google. It wasn't from marketing. So, knowing that and knowing that they kept putting more marketing into the shares because they were transparent about the pie and how money was spent, which I am grateful that they are. But at the same time, you get to now see that all that money is going to marketing now. Like you're not not seeing that, right? And but it's not that you're not seeing it. Their way of projecting that is, well, you're just not getting those leads. You're not getting those types of
I think
people.
companies spend way too much on marketing personally, but that's my
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, hey, when you are so tied in with Google that you would literally brag in a sales meeting that you have higher SEO ranking when you type in Guitar Center. Like you type in Guitar Center and Sweetwater comes up first.
That's awesome.
This goes back to my theory. This is why Google is not useful anymore for actually finding information. It's just everyone paying to have their searches at the top.
That's true.
And so I did the whole order, and then come to find out it's another sales engineer's customer. That guy never cuts me in on the deal, and then Sweetwater uses that whole example as a way of how we should treat customers. And then the sales engineer next to me literally looks at me and he goes, "Did he ever cut you in on that?" And I was like, "Nope."
Wow.
And that guy himself definitely has his own. He has a story with that, and I'm definitely not going to tell that because I really think I could get in trouble for that one.
So do you get do you have a website for this new business you're starting?
Yeah, so it's all tied to my website, swamisden.com. But realistically, what I did offer now is I've been posting ads that are just a direct Calendly link to book a call. But the thing that I mainly want to do, I don't know if I want to post the number on here yet, but I have recently started coming up with ads so people could call this business line that I do have.
Oh, nice.
And I would like to have it where realistically, you could call me at any time. And a lot of the stuff that songwriters have questions about, like, hey, do you want to know more about publishing? Do you want to know more about releasing songs? Because all the stuff that while I was still working at Sweetwater and still making those 80 to 100 calls, I produced like probably 4 or 5 albums now that I think about it, because it's like I produced stuff for myself, I produced for like 3, 4 other artists, and like song wrote and mixed and mastered, and I had a really dope studio setup that I was very invested in, and then I recognized I sold myself on being comfortable and realizing that there is aspects where I agree the job wasn't for me, but now that I'm seeing the hole in the industry with Sweetwater and how this just all kind of has been going, with the fact that it's now people are feeling like this is just impersonal, even though that's their whole business model, is we're personal, where you can talk to us, you can do all of these things. And now it's like there's no way that you could have possibly kept up with all of those people. Because I mean, even when I was there, the average customer database was 5,000 and like a multi-million person database at the time. So, putting it into perspective, it's like, oh my goodness, like I could see why this was so much stress. But also now that sales engineers, it almost would be better if you knew exactly what you wanted and asked to see if you could work something out, and then just hire somebody or talk to somebody who would know how to help set that up. And the thing that's great is I want to keep the line open so people can call me.
Right.
And if it's just like a simple question, you know, it's not a problem. Like, I want to stay in touch with people and help people out in the industry. But if it's something where, hey, like, I'm in a songwriting session right now, I need somebody to, like, portal into my computer and help me finish this song.
Like
you know, I'm a
consulting.
classically trained guitar player. Consulting, but also classically trained guitar player, producer. Like, I can, and the thing that's great about the portal is basically, hey, I have my whole studio set up here too. So if I need to make something and send you a file, or, you know, I need to record something and send you a file, it's not just like, oh, hey, I'm your virtual assistant or your second pair of ears. It's kind of like, I can coach you through the entire songwriting process, or I can be that person, like just a support for songwriters, because this is what I've learned now gathering more information about the people that have been contacting me, which is, I'm a songwriter, I'm stuck, I record at home, I feel like it sounds okay, I have a mix engineer. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I would say most people, that's exactly their situation, is that they want their recording because the technology's there. I mean, a Scarlett 2i2 now, the noise floor on those preamps is like so low compared to what it was 10 years ago. It's like you can track on a $200 setup. The trick is the art form of recording. It really is that. It's just knowing how to record.
Right. Yeah, well, let's there's a few things from the beginning of the interview I wanted to cover real quick. You'd said that audio interfaces that you got to play with. Now, you're quite a bit younger than Mongoose and I, so our relation to, because we didn't get to play with analog audio interfaces onto the computer until way later. We played with cassette 2-track at a time.
I had a Tascam 2-track cassette, man, the static, and you get through playing through there.
So that was our big back in the 90s when someone had one of those. I think you could do 4 total, 2 at a time, right? You had to do 2 tracks there and then 2 tracks there. But that was on a cassette, regular cassette. All right.
You know, it's funny. I actually did before any of that, now that I'm thinking about it, because I remember, like, when I was growing up playing guitar with certain people, I did learn how to record on like a tape, like a cassette. But I think it was one where it was right around that time where they could load CDs in.
Oh.
Like they had it. It was like tape and CD, or like tape and SD card.
Okay.
So they had one of the. It was like, you know what I'm saying? It was right around that time where they were changing things over, but like they still had the tape technology and things. Yeah. So I knew people that did that, but I'm not surprised. You know, I'm from Indiana, Michigan, bro. You think a lot of shit changes around here?
Well, I remember one of our friends. He was in a punk band that would. Oh man, this guy he would like, his forearms would bloody from his playing method, and he would just stay at like hostels throughout the United States as he traveled, and he was messing with DAT. Now we're I was going to school for technology, and I was like, oh my gosh, you got a DAT recorder? I'm like, holy crap. So I have no idea how much he paid for that back in the time, but
that's a lot.
But yeah, that was some interesting stuff. The other thing on your video on YouTube,
he always had like Russian punk cassette tapes, like just the most obscure stuff.
Yes,
man.
he was into. I wonder where that guy is. In your YouTube video, you had said, I want to just set the record straight here. You had said no one buys beats anymore, but my son does buy beats, and he makes some stuff off beats that he actually buys. So that still. At least some people do that.
So yeah, the thing with that philosophy, and what I mean by that is a lot of people don't really know what they're getting into when they buy beats and what they're actually buying. Because ultimately, like, if you're really buying a beat, you should do it exclusive. You should do exclusive licensing. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't want to pay that exclusive upfront fee, or they don't want to work with somebody like that. Because a lot of times, like, I mean, if it's a very cheap producer, they're going to charge whatever. Right. But I think lowball, I've heard industry rate is like $1,000 to $1,500, and then 10% of your master recording. But then it's understanding, like, you know, people that buy beats, right? They don't understand the equity behind it, because that's where the money is. You know, you could make a free song, you could put it out there, use the systems that are in place like DistroKid, United Masters, to put it on TikTok and the YouTube Shorts playlisting now, and get your music out there, right? And you could blow up off of this stuff. 16-year-olds are making millions of dollars
That's
off
crazy.
of that. But if they didn't understand what beat they bought, that producer can now come back and just be like, hey, so those terms that you just like glossed over on BeatStars, yeah, like, so
Yeah.
you just hit that play limit where I can renegotiate now,
See,
and
yeah.
I see what you're doing.
And I told
Yep.
him to make his own.
So,
he's got a MIDI keyboard.
but
I'm like, play with that.
if that's the case, and that's something where he needs production or somebody to work with, seriously, like, I'll send you guys the phone number, the email.
Sure.
Like, that's exactly the other thing that I do as well, which I'm working with someone now who they're rebranding, and they're looking for somebody to help songwrite and produce records for them. And that's what I do every day anyway. So, like, but the way I work too is I'll get references from people like, hey, what do you like? What's your goal? What's the direction you want to go? And then I'll usually like remake the reference in a way where I'm not copywriting the sample, I'm not interpolating the sample, but I'm still keeping the key, the tempo, the arrangement. So literally it's like you could put the same exact verse that you recorded on a beat, you couldn't get off of YouTube because somebody else exclusive bought it, or you just can't afford the license fee.
Right.
And I do have affordable rates. It's something where I do negotiate, and depending on what exactly you're doing and what you want, like, that's something I'm willing to work with different budgets.
All right, cool. Let's settle a debate for us. Powered or passive speakers?
Purpose. That's always the question. It's about purpose. So I'll tell you why.
Diplomatic response.
No, this is stuff and I'm going to tell you why, because this is stuff that can get people killed if you don't know. So passive speakers, they're going to be for larger events. They're going to be for like a live sound, and you're going to want to fly them. And the reason why is, so like, if you're flying a powered speaker in the air and it's plugged into the ceiling, right? And that power amp overheats and catches on fire.
Yeah.
Your whole building's going down, bro. And it's happened. Like, that has happened plenty of times.
That's like Midnight Oil when they had that. Well, I think that was pyrotechnics, they said. But you remember that? Like,
club down?
that was like 30 years ago in like Chicago. And the club burned down and a bunch of people died.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Anyway.
Right. And the thing was, though, is like, with the power amps, if they're on the ground, you can shut them off.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And then you could put them out. Now, with powered speakers, it's just like, what makes sense? Are you at a coffee house? Why would you bring passive speakers to a coffee house? Like, I'm just not.
Right.
I'm not here to rip your head off with my acoustic set where, anyway, here's Wonderwall. Blam, it just, their heads explode.
Yeah.
Like scanners, Like,
yeah. So you'd agree that passive system is more scalable.
Yeah, I would say it is a lot more scalable, but the thing is too is the quality is a lot more scalable. And then also, if you think about it this way, with a lot of people don't know with passive systems, is if you get a higher wattage power amplifier, you want to match the impedance, absolutely, and you want to check per channel, right? And if that's RMS or peak, how it's rated in the manual.
Right.
If you get a power amplifier that has more, essentially more than what the speaker is rated for, you now have more headroom, which means that you can run those speakers cleaner and not push the power amplifiers as hard. And I learned that from Bob Katz, actually, when I was at Ball State University. Like, he showed up to a seminar that he did for 3 days, and it was like he showed up with a pair of Dyne Audio M3s, and they weren't even out yet, and they were just massive mastering speakers since he was sponsored by them. And then he brought a 12,000 watt power amp, and I asked him, I was like, why would you bring this and only put the volume at like 0.1? And he was just like, and then he showed us, which is why you don't mix on mastering speakers and why you don't master on mixing speakers, which is he did a half a dB cut on a record, and it fucks with your brain. Like, it's very drastic because there's no noise, because that's what that power amp is pushing, is like, if you have a higher wattage and then what the speakers really required, it basically means you don't only have to turn it up, really not at all. to get the signal to pass through, and the signal to noise ratio is better.
Wow. Okay.
But that's why you would have to know that though about what you're buying. So the answer is, if you want to spend a lot of money and you know what you're doing, absolutely, it's more scalable. But but it's also about purpose. Like, okay, if I'm doing so another thing I used to do was corporate AV. So sometimes you had to be practical about where you place speakers in different rooms and like how you could fit stuff in there. So sometimes we would have to create this like wireless speaker thing, which I would basically, I figured out a way to reverse engineer those Sennheiser wireless plug systems, the ones where you could take a dynamic microphone and plug it into the wireless pack bottom part, and now it's a wireless microphone.
Sure.
I basically reverse the signal, so it would be like signal comes out of the console, goes into the back of a speaker.
Yeah.
So now we could run 10 different we could run 5 speakers in this small vicinity, because it wasn't, you can't go too far with wireless and with people on their cell phones and stuff, but it would be like you'd have to do practical stuff to get things to work. So if you had passive speakers on top of that, bro, oh my God, I already do not like dealing with loadout time. Like that's just
right. No, I conceded in the end that we're just not a big enough setup that we didn't need a passive system. So we got I upgraded though to Yamaha DZR15s, I think. And those
Yamaha's
are
always good, man.
We played in amphitheater, and I was surprised that those were able to actually pump out enough volume.
I'm not.
Yeah,
honestly, like the more that I use those, like I suggested those or I think Electro Voice stuff at the time. I always had, like, a lot of people thought, hey, for the price, how heavy they are, which they're really not, and just kind of like what you need them for. They handled most of the situations, and they always worked and sounded good. Like, you didn't really have to like sit there and tweak with it too much to get it to sound good. Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, we're over the hour here. Can you tell the website once again to find you?
Yeah. My website is swamisden.com, and that's SWAMISDEN.com.
And we'll have that in the show notes as well. Anything else to go over real quick?
No, off the top of my head, other than, you know what, I think if I can, I'll leave a message with my phone number if you want to leave that information so people can call me and have access to me and give me a ring if they do have those questions.
We can put that in the notes.
I want to keep, that and my email as well. They're more than, if you want to talk about the music industry, where you're going with your projects, or just, talk about music and stuff like that, just hit my line. I want to keep the door open for people.
All right. Well, Swami, thanks for coming on Packets and Bolts.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, likewise. You guys have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you.
Take care.
All right, Mongoose. Well, that was probably the most knowledgeable audio engineer we've talked to. We forgot to ask him about always having a sound guy at any show.
Yeah, but he left his contact information. We're putting that in the show notes.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants to look Midnight Swami up, of course, reach out. He's starting this great company and extremely knowledgeable recording and mixing engineer. It was really a pleasure to talk to him about a variety of things. We touched on, of course, some of the challenges of COVID and how that translated into Sweetwater particularly, but the challenges and his personal challenges and his viewpoints on Sweetwater, what we've seen, and a variety of other things. So it was a really good interview.
Yeah, and that is swamisden.com. We'll have the information in the show notes. It is the December 17th, 2023, Sunday. Possibly the last show we're going to have this year. We'll see if we squeeze one in. Otherwise, it'll be in January. Any last thoughts there, Mongoose?
Happy holidays, everybody.
All right, remember, email the show, packetsandbolts@gmail.com, packetsandbolts@gmail.com. Follow us, Mastodon. Join Discord. Remember to keep packing those bolts. Till next time, see ya. Real goat.